Is the 10th overall pick the luckiest spot in the NFL draft? Well, the top 5 get all the hype. Number 10 has quietly built a dynasty of Hall of Famers and game changers. We're talking about the slot that delivered Super Bowl MVP Marcus Allen, the ferocious T-Sizzle Terrell Suggs, and the most dominant bust in NFL history, Jerome Bettis. But the biggest perfect 10 of all? In 2017, the Chiefs traded up for a quarterback from Texas Tech named Patrick Mahomes. 3 rings and 2 MVPs later, the rest is history. From lockdown corners to the face of the league, these are the legendary players selected 10th overall. And it continues in the Pigskin Dispatch countdown of 32 straight days to the NFL Draft. And we're joined once again by our guest, Ed Cleese. We are entering into the great time here. We are 10 days from the National Football League draft, and we're going to talk about the top 10 picks from here on in, going through our countdown of 32 straight days. Number 10 pick is on our slate today. The history and the legends of the first 90 drafts are coming up. Ed Cleese is joining us. Ed, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darin, how are you today?
I am doing super. You know, we are in top 10 mode now, talking about some of the great legends of the game that we've talked about a bunch that were outside the top 10, but this is really where the guys are going deep to pick here and expect them.
Yeah, it's getting harder, and the research is getting a little trickier for sure. We're just getting bigger and bigger. We're growing for sure, no doubt, and it's fun.
Yeah, it definitely is. We're going to be talking about a lot of legends today. I know you like to talk about from 1980 to the modern time. So what's your overview of these selections last 40-some years?
Recently, it's kind of been hit or miss, and there's one massive hit who we will talk about later, and then I'd say one massive miss. Some other names that are currently playing that were taken 10th overall that people would know for sure are Garrett Wilson and Devontae Smith, 2 really, really good receivers. Todd Gurley was taken here, who looked like he was strapped to a rocket, and then his career just kind of ended, like a lot of running backs we've seen. But for a very brief period there, was really excellent for the Rams. A little bit of a trend with this area of the draft is that recent quarterbacks have not fared well. I don't want to bury J.J. McCarthy right now. He was literally just drafted in 2024 and has 6 or 7 starts, something like that. So
he might be third string going.
Yeah, it's not it's not a good feeling, I think, right now if you're the Vikings with him, but he's still very early. Josh Rosen was taken in 2018, 3 career wins. That's bad. Blaine Gabbert was taken in 2010. He actually did play for 12 years in the NFL, but his career record was 14-35, which is very bad. And he spent most of that time as a backup. And then Matt Leinart was taken 2006 out of USC, hit an 8-10 career record, and didn't even stick around as a backup.
Heisman Trophy winner too. Just never really panned out for him in the National Football League.
Yeah, so if you combine the 10th and 11th picks, with one notable exception coming up, there is recent history is quarterbacks have not fared well. And in terms of, I really couldn't find. I was trying to say there's got to be at least one more that I would say is a big bust. There was definitely a number of disappointing players taken here that didn't amount to a lot. But for me, a bust is a pretty harsh label. So I have a kind of a criteria for it. I only really found one, and that would have been all the way back in 1981, wide receiver for the Bengals, a gentleman named David Verser. He had 23 career catches for the Bengals. So that kind of tells you all you need to know. But what's interesting is in that 1981 draft, the Bengals also took a receiver in the 2nd round. Do you have any idea who that was?
What year?
81.
81. Oh God, I'm probably before Carl Pickens. I don't have no idea.
Chris Collinsworth.
Was it? Oh, okay.
So it's kind of funny.
He was in the 70s. Okay.
They went wide receiver in back-to-back picks in that draft, and they hit on one and they missed on the other. And so it was kind of interesting, though. The Verser did have a 40-yard kickoff return in the Freezer Bowl, the infamous game in Cincinnati, of the coldest game ever played against the Chargers. He had one big play in there. And then I didn't realize this. He was credited with missing the block in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. There was an audible to a run that apparently he missed, and he missed his block that led to a 4th and 1 stop near the goal line by the 49ers. So some people have blamed poor David Verser for that all these years later. But that was kind of it when it came to the negative.
Okay, well, that's kind of maybe Versher had a better career than maybe Josh Rosen knows, or maybe Rosen might be the bigger bust there.
It was pretty rough. We do have a number of honorable mentions, and again, at this point in the draft, Darin, I'm not going to just read off good players. I'll just ones that stick out to me. Chris McAllister was taken by the Ravens in '99 and was a starter on the legendary defenses of the early 2000s for the Ravens. Very good player. Herman Moore, '91 for the Lions. In the mid '90s, had a couple massive seasons, like massive. He didn't do it very long, but when they were running that run and shoot, man, he was all over. He was like a major fantasy guy, big time.
Yeah, you know we got some big stars when you're talking about Herman Moore on honorable mention. So.
Yeah, for sure. Keith Byers is a guy that I always remember real strong. He's an old NFC East guy, 86, taken by the Eagles. He played that like no position. He was sort of like running back, fullback, kind of receiver, kind of tight end. Like no one statistic ever. They just kind of did everything with him.
The H-back before the H-back, maybe.
Yeah, he was kind of all over. So he was kind of a fun player. Al Toon was taken the year before by the Jets in '85. Really talented guy. He was the first player that I remember as a kid dealing with concussions. Like that I remember like that was like a big deal. And I remember they said he couldn't see sometimes. So he had a bunch of issues with that. And then there was two guys that I really wanted to put in the top 5. I actually had one of them there, and I had a Hall of Famer out. And at the last minute, I switched because I guess I'm just a weenie about it. Is I had Stephon Gilmore drafted in 2012, and then he just didn't play quite long enough, but he was the Defensive Player of the Year. And then Willie Anderson was an offensive tackle that I really wanted to put in my top 5. Played for the Bengals, was taken in '96, 3 straight first-team All-Pros. And we've talked about this with some other guys. He was on really bad teams. So he was probably better than we even know because it probably took him a while to get recognized. But those just missed the cut.
Yeah. Those are some good ones you're talking about. There are definitely some guys that probably borderline Canton and a couple of them, maybe, I don't know if they'll ever make it, but have some good names. All right. Well, you got plenty of Hall of Famers to talk about and some legends and guys that probably will be in Canton in your top 5, I'm sure. So why don't you give us a rundown? Let's take a break for a moment to tell you about a new product so that you can take and put your football knowledge that we feed you each and every day to the test. It is the Pigskin Trivia Drive on pigskindispatch.com. You're the quarterback. You call the shots, choose your play, grind it out with a run, pick up steady gains on a short pass, or risk it all with a long pass for a massive chunk of yardage. It isn't just a quiz, it's a march for glory. It's the Pigskin Trivia Drive. Remember, when the huddle's over, when you pick your play, the faster you answer, the more yards you gain. Hesitation is the enemy of the end zone. Keep those chains moving. Cross that yellow line to reset your downs and earn a critical audible. Stuck on a tough defensive look? Use those audibles to strip away 2 wrong answers and find your open receiver. Watch the play clock. You've got just 25 seconds to make the read. Take too long, and it's a 5-yard penalty for delay of game. It's game action. In this stadium, your brain is the engine, but the clock is the opponent. The mission is simple. Score as many touchdowns as possible in 5 minutes. And when the clock hits 0, your score hits the global leaderboard. Are you a bench warmer or a Hall of Famer? Step up to the line. Your drive starts now on pigskindispatch.com, the Trivia Drive. Don't let your football history knowledge go to waste. Try the Pigskin Trivia Drive on pigskindispatch.com. And now, let's get back into our program.
So my top 5, my number 5 and my number 4 are guys that I didn't want to put in my top 5 because I actually think they're overrated. But I think I had to put them there. So number 5, I've got Marcus Allen, 1983 running back, taken by the Raiders. He's overrated, Darin.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So he was the Offensive Rookie of the Year in the strike-shortened.
It wasn't because of a certain Super Bowl that he played.
I was about to say, it's not just because I'm still bitter, because that actually is.
Sounds a little salty, you are, Marcus Allen.
The Marcus Allen amazing touchdown run in the Super Bowl that against the Redskins is literally one of the first plays I can ever remember as seeing. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's just lingering.
Yeah, that's Paul still in the wound, I think.
Right. So then after his rookie year, where he was Offensive Rookie of the Year, his next 3 years were huge. Including the NFL MVP in 1985. Okay, But now let's talk. He played 12 more seasons after that. Never got to 1,000 yards again. Never got to 900. Had a bunch that were like in the 600, 400, 500. He was very steady. He was a presence he played for the Chiefs for a long time. Ultimately, I waffled, but I put him there because I said, you know what? If you look at the all-time rushing list, he's 15th all-time in yards, which is actually maybe not as high as you would think for as long as he played. But then again, that speaks to the fact that he really wasn't having big years. And then it was more of a volume thing with him. But he is third all-time in rushing touchdowns, and that does matter, and that's a big deal. And so I was like, you know what? He's in the top 5. I got to put him in over Stephon Gilmore and Willie Anderson.
You know what, though? I think you got to look at his entire body of work, because I think he's deserving of the Hall of Fame. I think he's deserving to be in the top 5. This guy, when he was like a junior or sophomore in college, he was a fullback. He was a blocking back, and I think it was for Charles White, if I'm not mistaken, at USC. And after White or whoever the back was, if I'm mistaken on White, left the school, to go in the NFL, he became the bell cow. And I don't think it was anticipated that he wasn't the heir apparent, I guess, but he really took up the position by storm and made no doubt that he deserved to be there and deserved to be in the NFL. I think he was a gamer, and I think he's, was sort of that back that we like today, where they can catch the ball out of the backfield and make some good moves on defenders and get those tough yards. I think Marcus Allen did all that, and maybe the end of his career wasn't as good as the middle and the beginning of his career, but still pretty solid.
Yeah, and two things can be true at once. You can be a Hall of Famer and be overrated.
Okay.
So speaking of, what a very good segue to my number 4. And that is Jerome the Bus Bettis, taken in 1993 by the Rams, but of course is much better known as a Steeler, which he should be. Now, I don't think he's quite as overrated as Allen, but I do think he's a little
You think Jerome Bettis is overrated? Okay.
A little bit.
I want to hear this.
Now, you have to understand this. We're not comparing him to your average NFL running back. He's in the Hall of Fame. So we are comparing him to other Hall of Fame running backs, or maybe other running backs that have a debate to get in, like the guys maybe on the edge. So in that debate, I have him a little bit overrated. Now, he was the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and then the Rams made a terrible trade after, I think, his third year in the league, a terrible trade. They thought they took Lawrence Phillips from Nebraska, who they thought was going to lead their offense, and they didn't need Bettis anymore. They thought he was already winding down. Traded him to the Steelers for almost nothing. And then he goes to Pittsburgh, and he has 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons with the Steelers. This was interesting to me. Over those 6 seasons, Darin, he only averaged 5 touchdowns a year. So he, as big and burly and amazing as he was barely getting in the end zone, even for a lot of those good teams. He was churning up yards and doing fine. And I'd say that I have him listed as a volume guy, not so much explosive. And then one thing that did hurt him in my ranking was he was not good in the playoffs, or he at least wasn't very effective in the playoffs. His yards per carry in the playoffs were not good. So he was not, and he doesn't have big numbers in the playoffs at all. That said, I also value what I'll call like the cultural impact, and his name was the Bus. He's got to be about as fun to watch a dude. I think everybody likes to see the big guy with the football in their hands. And, we don't get to see it that often because, a defensive lineman or somebody has to intercept a pass or scoop a fumble up, and everybody gets so excited to see the big guy run. Well, with Bettis, you got to see it, 22 times a game or whatever. And he was a load. He was a very good running back. He was very productive. He was on some good teams. Obviously the Super Bowl team, I think he had like 300 yards rushing that season. So he wasn't a big part of the team. He was more of like the spiritual veteran leader, I guess, at that point, trying to get over the top. And they got him his ring in his hometown, which was great. He was a real fun guy. He was funny.
But you also had Fast Willie Parker that was on the rise that year.
Right.
He was a short yardage guy that year.
So if we're talking about running backs, he's going to be a little lower on my list of all-time running back lists. But we're talking about the 10th pick in the history of the NFL draft since 1980, and I'm very comfortable putting him there at number 4.
Well, I will disagree with you being overrated, and it's not just from a Steelers aspect. And you're saying you wouldn't have him in the top rushers. He is currently number 8 on all-time rushing yards list in NFL history. I mean, that's more than Tony Dorsett, more than Jim Brown yards rushing. The only ones above him are Emmitt Smith, Peyton, Frank Gore, Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson, Curtis Martin, LaDainian Tomlinson. That's pretty good company to be in.
Yeah,
and
it just
the
goes
guys
back
that
to
are behind him in yards, and he didn't have, he had a nice, decent career, but not, there's players that had longer careers than he did. He had some health issues. I met him a few years ago, and he's got bad knees and everything else. He does have a son playing for Notre Dame, just like he did. Going to be probably a big star at wide receiver this year for the Irish. But he was a gamer. His one downfall was probably that fumble against the Colts where Ben Roethlisberger had to make the shoestring tackle. We talked a couple days ago about beast mode giving him the short yardage. Well, they gave it to Bettis, who was, that kind of back, and he fumbled the ball. So maybe it wasn't the safest thing. Maybe they should have threw the slant pass. No, I'm not saying that. I definitely think Bettis deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and I don't think he's overrated at all because he was a fun player, he was a productive player, and he's in the top 8 all-time leading rushers.
Yes, I know. But for me, more of a volume guy, and that does have value. Longevity matters. Being able to do it for a long time matters. But I put a little more emphasis on how good is your good, as Scott Van Pelt likes to say. And when we pair him up against some of those other guys you mentioned, I'll take the other guys over him. But
two most important things. He is a Super Bowl champion, and he's a proxy Western Pennsylvanian. So
you're going to find a way to connect the dots to Western PA one way or the other.
That's right. Right.
Well, we'll go a little opposite with number 3, Darin, because we're going to talk about the Steelers' greatest rival. And that is Terrell Suggs, taken in 2003, a defensive end by the Ravens, of course. He is 8th all-time in sacks. Everybody around him on that list is in the Hall of Fame, both above him and below him. Everybody around him is in the Hall of Fame. He's the only one that's not. I think he just became eligible very recently. So I think he'll
get the nudge. He'll be in the next couple of years.
Yeah. This is something I really like. Now we've only been tracking this since '99, but he is the all-time leader in tackles for loss in the history of the NFL. Number 1. So not only are you sacking the quarterback, you're getting in the backfield and disrupting other plays as well. Defensive Rookie of the Year. He never had like an insane season. So he never had like that TJ Watt, like 20 sacks or whatever like that. He tapped out at 14, but he was very consistently in that range. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL in 2011. In the 2010 playoffs, he had 5 sacks and 4 tackles for loss just in the playoffs. He's on a lot of playoff games. He had 2 sacks in the overtime win in Denver. That the Flacco touchdown pass where they tied it late, and then the Ravens beat that was in 2012. So he had 2 sacks in that game. He was an impact player. Was on some great defense. He was drafted in 2003, so he missed that first window of Ravens defenses and was kind of like on that second wave of that era of Ravens football. But a real monster for sure.
Yeah, he was a big dude. He was built like a brick shit house, and played like a gamer. He definitely gave trouble to anybody. I had to watch him 2-3 times every year, and he was very disruptive. And you don't get the name T Sizzle as your nickname unless you're going to be productive. And
you didn't know that they call me E Sizzle.
They call you E Sizzle.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Little known fact. I won't tell you why though.
Maybe you fried a lot of bacon. I don't know.
Yes.
You're short order cook.
Top notch. I'm in the Bacon Hall of Fame. Yes.
Not a bad place to be. Yep. But, all right. Who do you have above Suggs?
Number 2 is another Baltimore Ravens all-time great, Rod Woodson.
Oh, okay. I'm about. I think I have like something coming up out of my throat. A Baltimore Raven. Oh, nobody
So,
remembers as I'm a Baltimore
oh,
Raven.
wait, let's get to that. So, Rod Woodson was taken in 1987 as a corner by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He played 17 years in the NFL. He had 71 interceptions. He's the all-time leader in NFL history in pick sixes. From 1989 through 94, all with the Steelers. That's 6 years. He was 5 of those 6 years, he was first team All-Pro and the defensive player of the year in 93. He got hurt in week 1 of 95. You probably remember that. So unfortunately for him, he missed the entire season they went to the Super Bowl that year. He didn't play. He played in the first game and then didn't play again. He was okay in 96.
I think he did get it. They did get him in the Super Bowl, I think, for a player.
I thought I looked and I didn't see that he had any stats.
I thought they did like near the beginning of the game, or wasn't productive. He wasn't ready to play, but just to get him in, I know he suited up. I know.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't see anything on the stat sheet. I actually do not remember him playing for the 49ers in 97. I don't remember that. So at that point, it looked like his career might be over or winding down. You know, especially when you switch teams, it's like, oh, okay, now he had played 11 years in the NFL at that point, Darin. And in my opinion, had he retired right then, he would have gone to the Hall of Fame. He did not retire. He played 1 year as a corner in Baltimore with the Ravens in 1998. Then they transitioned him to safety. And it's almost like he had a second Hall of Fame career because he made 3 Pro Bowls with the Ravens. And he was on the infamous 2000 Ravens defense that won the Super Bowl, and as some people think is the best defense of all time. He was incredible. Then he was first team All-Pro as a safety for the Raiders in 2002 when they went to the Super Bowl, and he had his most interceptions in his career that season at age 37. This guy was unreal. Who makes a position change in your mid-30s and is like arguably just as good at the other position? If you try to find anything negative about Rod Woodson, would be that he played 20 career postseason games and he only had 1 interception.
I thought the Ravens part was the negative thing. But, that's a whole different story.
But the truth is, yes, I think in my mind's eye, and I think in most people's mind's eye, you think of him as a Steeler in the yellow and black. But I think Ravens fans have every right to also claim him because he was a massive part of a Super Bowl winning team. And he was there for 3 years. So it wasn't like it was just a mercenary year. So I'm going to go ahead and call him a Raven, Darin.
We've
had too much Western.
When you see them guys walking up the steps of Canton and they, what they show, we talked about Jerome Bettis was drafted by the Rams. Well, he was in a Steeler uniform and all the highlights and everything they showed. He retired as a Steeler and is in the Hall of Fame basically as a Steeler. Rod Woodson definitely is in as a Steeler. This guy, was a track star, almost made the Olympic team. He was so fast from his Purdue days. I think he was one of the top NCAA runners at the time. I believe the one where they handed the baton off. I'm missing the name.
The relay.
So I think that's what his best thing was. So he definitely had speed, but had a contract negotiation, and conflict as a rookie with Chuck Noll as the head coach. So that didn't bode very well, but they were patient. They waited for him, finally got him signed, made camp, and made his impact with the Steelers. But he's definitely a Steeler. There's no doubt about it. That's nothing else. We even forget about the Niners and the Raiders and those dirty birds in Maryland. We forget about those years.
I got you all fired up.
That's right. But at least we got another Western Pennsylvania player in your conversation. So that's a good thing.
All right. Well, this number one guy, I guess for a little while, his dad also played in Western Pennsylvania, just not football. Does that count?
That counts. That counts.
Oh, boy. So, all right. Well, number one.
The bloodline.
Number one, Pat Mahomes' senior son, Patrick Mahomes, was taken in 2017 by by the Chiefs. And I don't think it's too early to put him here. I don't think I'm even projecting. I'm not even saying if he keeps going, there's no in my opinion, if he said tomorrow I'm done, he's still number one here. We're not going to go through it.
He's, I mean, if he can't play another down, he's first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about it.
I mean, I'm not going to say much about it because we don't need to rattle it all off. But this is just one thing. This is sort of the mic drop. Right now, Darin, he is 17-4 in his career in the playoffs with a 46-10 touchdown to interception ratio. So we know what he is in the regular season, and then somehow he's been even better in the postseason. He's remarkable. I think this is tough, but I actually, at least 2 years ago, he's the best quarterback I've ever seen. I mean, and I hold Montana and Brady in the highest regard, and I don't think I would rank Mahomes above them quite yet because he has to continue to do it. But if you just said, who do you think's the best? Like, you got to get the ball to one of these dudes, and obviously you're not going to go wrong with any of them. But I'm just thinking, man, I'll give it to 15 because there's certain things that he can do physically that nobody else can do, and he has all of the other attributes too. You know what I mean? Like the smarts and the savvy and the clutch gene and all of that. Like he's got all of the Joe Cool. He's got all the Brady. He's got all the pre-snap, and he's a physical freak. So it's just it's remarkable. Patrick Mahomes is the best number 10 pick ever. Come argue that.
No argument there. I don't think anybody can argue that. He's and they could pick perennial Hall of Famers the next 5 years in a row at that position, and I think Patrick Mahomes will still be number one, no matter what's going on there. So yeah, those are some good selections, great players that we got to talk about here today. The most popular pick, if your team's picking number 10 this year, the most popular trend at the number 10 spot is a defensive back. So that very well could happen this year. A lot of good ones in the draft this year. A total of 5 Hall of Famers so far in our draft. We talked about Bettis and Woodson and Marcus Allen. We had these guys came out, the other two, within a 3-year span together. Alex Karras, Detroit Lions in 1958.
No. That's Webster's dad.
That's Webster's dad. Yeah, that's right.
That's how I knew him at first.
I knew him at first from the scandal that he had.
And he was also in Paper Lion, right?
Yeah, Paper Lion. Yeah, he was in that movie too. And Ron Mix in 1960 by the Baltimore Colts, the other Baltimore team.
He wound up with the Chargers, right? Wasn't he a Charger?
Yeah, he ended up being with the Chargers, but he was a Hall of Famer. And somebody's not in the Hall of Fame, but somebody worth mentioning, Chicago Bears in 1942, during the war years, Frankie Albert was their quarterback drafted out of Stanford. He was a great player for them for many years. So
did you have some really Frankie Albert poster on your wall growing up?
What's that?
Did you have a Frankie Albert poster on your wall growing up?
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit old for posters in 1942. Yeah, that's
see all that Western PA talk. I had to try to get back at you a little bit.
Yeah, my dad wasn't even born in 1942, okay. But our draft stat of the day is really kind of a fun one, and this happened at the number 10 spot. And maybe you remember this. The mismanaged clock of 2003, Minnesota Vikings had a trade for the number 10 pick and agreed upon it, but failed to submit it before the time expired. And that little clock that's ticking as we're watching a draft. Well, that it actually expired. So the other teams behind them rushed in, made their picks, causing the Vikings to skip their turn in a moment of pure chaos. And I'd forget where they ended up picking, but
I don't remember. All I remember was being elated because as a kid watching the draft all those years, I always wondered, well, I see the ticker. What happens if they don't get it in? And like, I'm like, well, that will never happen. And, and then it happened. And like all the guys on the desk were like, I think something's weird's going on here. I don't know what's going on. And then when it happened, it was like, it finally happened. Somebody forgot to make their pick. I was so excited. I remember that.
Yeah. I remember I'm sitting there thinking like, well, what do they do next? The Vikings automatically get like Mel Kiper's highest ranked guy or, what's going to happen here? But now we know what happens because you actually lose your turn for a bit. And I forget exactly where I guess I should have looked it up to see where they ended up drafting, but it was far less than 10. So
maybe the Browns should do that, and just that way they don't get lambasted for making another bad pick. They can just claim that they just didn't get it in time.
It wasn't our fault. The
Right.
shorter clock in the first round got us.
My cell phone dropped. The signal dropped. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. Well, that wraps up our number 10 spot. Tune in tomorrow. We were keeping that countdown alive, and Ed's going to join us tomorrow for our 9 selections. Ed, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Darin.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.